The execution of Hugh le Despenser the Younger, 1326, a turning point in English medieval politics. The execution of Hugh le Despenser the Younger on November 24, 1326, was one of the defining moments in medieval English history. It not only marked the brutal end of an era of royal favoritism and corruption, but also underscored the deep-seated tensions that plagued Edward II's reign. Let's explore the broader political and social context of the early 14th century, Despenser's rise to power, his dramatic fall, and the long-term consequences of his execution on English politics, law, and society. Historical context and Edward II's reign. The early 14th century was a turbulent period in English history. Edward I, the formidable Hammer of the Scots, left his son Edward II a kingdom rife with challenges. Edward II ascended the throne in 1307 but quickly proved ill-suited to governance. Unlike his father, who was a capable military leader and administrator, Edward II showed little interest in military campaigns or the day-to-day responsibilities of kingship. This indifference contributed to the growing dissatisfaction among his barons. England's political landscape during Edward II's reign was marked by financial strain, military failure, and deep divisions within the nobility. Economic hardships caused by poor harvests, inflation, and the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 fueled discontent. Meanwhile, Edward's failures in Scotland, culminating in Robert the Bruce's decisive victory at Bannockburn in 1314, further undermined his authority. Against this backdrop, Edward's reliance on favourites like Piers Gaveston and later Hugh le Despenser the Younger exacerbated tensions. Edward II's leadership style was a fundamental factor in the political turmoil of his reign. Unlike his predecessors, Edward failed to maintain a delicate balance between his personal relationships and his responsibilities as king. His favoritism alienated the nobility and weakened the crown, creating a political environment ripe for rebellion. Hugh le Despenser the Younger, ambition and power. Hugh le Despenser the Younger was born around 1286 into a prominent noble family. His marriage to Eleanor de Clare, granddaughter of Edward I, in 1306 significantly elevated his status. However, Despenser's rise to power began in earnest after the execution of Piers Gaveston in 1312. By the early 1320s, he had become Edward II's most trusted advisor and confidant. Despenser's ambition was boundless. He amassed vast estates, particularly in Wales, often through dubious legal means. One of his most infamous acts was the seizure of Gower, a lordship in South Wales, which violated the rights of its lawful heirs. His actions alienated local lords and contributed to widespread resentment. Despenser's greed and disregard for feudal norms made him a symbol of the abuses of royal favoritism. Historians have debated the nature of Despenser's relationship with Edward II. Some contemporary chroniclers, such as Adam of Newramouth, suggested that their bond was deeply personal, even romantic. While modern scholars remain divided on the issue, it is clear that Despenser's influence over the king extended beyond the political realm, further alienating the nobility and Queen Isabella. Economic and legal exploitation. Despenser's accumulation of wealth came at a significant cost to the kingdom. He exploited his position to confiscate lands, manipulate judicial processes, and impose fines on political enemies. His financial policies disrupted local economies, particularly in Wales, where his oppressive taxation and exploitation of resources caused widespread discontent. At the national level, Edward II's reliance on Despenser strained relations with Parliament. The king's inability to address economic grievances, coupled with Despenser's financial manipulations, created a climate of hostility. These economic tensions were a key factor in rallying support for Isabella and Mortimer's rebellion. Baronial opposition and the rise of Isabella and Mortimer. The Despensers' dominance over Edward II united the king's enemies. Opposition coalesced around Thomas of Lancaster, a powerful baron who led a rebellion against the crown in 1322. Although Lancaster's defeat and execution temporarily secured Edward's position, his martyrdom inspired further resistance. Roger Mortimer emerged as a key figure in the opposition after escaping imprisonment in the Tower of London in 1323. Mortimer's alliance with Queen Isabella, Edward's estranged wife, proved decisive. Isabella, humiliated by the Despensers and estranged from her husband, travelled to France in 1325 under the pretext of negotiating with her brother, King Charles IV. Instead, she formed a personal and political partnership with Mortimer. Their invasion of England in 1326 was swift and decisive. Discontented nobles, townspeople, and even clergy rallied to their cause, viewing them as liberators from the Despenser regime. Edward II and the Despensers fled, but were soon captured. Hugh le Despenser the Elder was executed in October 1326, while Edward II and Hugh le Despenser the Younger were apprehended in South Wales. The trial and execution of Hugh le Despenser the Younger. Hugh le Despenser the Younger's trial in Hereford was a theatrical display of vengeance and justice. Presided over by Isabella and Mortimer, the court accused Despenser of crimes including treason, theft, and heresy. The charges, though rooted in truth, reflected the deep personal animosities he had inspired. Despenser's execution was an elaborate and gruesome spectacle. On November 24, 1326, he was dragged through the streets of Hereford on a hurdle, stripped of his dignity before a jeering crowd. He was hanged, cut down before death, disemboweled while still alive, and finally beheaded. His body was quartered, with parts sent to various locations as a warning. His head was displayed on London Bridge, a stark reminder of the consequences of overreaching power. The brutality of Despenser's execution underscored the hatred he had inspired. Chroniclers such as Geoffrey Le Baker emphasized the symbolic destruction of his power, portraying his death as a triumph of justice. Gender and power in Isabella's rebellion. Isabella's role in orchestrating Despenser's downfall challenges traditional notions of medieval queenship. As a queen consort, Isabella was expected to support the king and bear heirs. However, her rebellion against Edward II marked a dramatic departure from these expectations. Her actions redefined the role of women in medieval politics, demonstrating that queens could wield significant political and military power. Isabella's motivations were both personal and political. Her humiliation at the hands of the Despensers, coupled with Edward's neglect, drove her to seek power independently. Her partnership with Mortimer provided the military and political backing necessary to overthrow Edward. The rebellion also highlighted the gender dynamics of medieval power. Isabella faced significant criticism, both during her lifetime and in later historiography, for her defiance of traditional gender roles. However, her actions set a precedent for future queens, such as Margaret of Anjou and Elizabeth I, who would also challenge societal expectations. Cultural and social implications of the execution. Despenser's execution resonated deeply with medieval society. Public executions in this period were not merely acts of punishment but also acts of political theatre. They reinforced the authority of those in power and served as cautionary tales. For the common people, Despenser's death was a moment of catharsis, symbolizing the end of an oppressive regime. The spectacle of Despenser's execution also reflected medieval conceptions of justice. The gruesome nature of his punishment was intended to match the severity of his crimes and to restore moral order. Chronicles, ballads, and oral traditions preserved the story of his downfall, ensuring that his legacy as a symbol of tyranny endured. Long-term consequences. The execution of Hugh le Despenser the Younger marked a turning point in English history. It paved the way for the deposition of Edward II in January 1327, setting a precedent for the removal of monarchs who failed to govern effectively. Edward's abdication highlighted the fragility of royal authority and underscored the importance of maintaining a balance between the crown and the nobility. For Isabella and Mortimer, the removal of the Despensers temporarily solidified their control. However, their regime faced significant challenges. Mortimer's increasingly autocratic behavior and Isabella's unpopularity led to their downfall in 1330, when Edward III overthrew them and executed Mortimer. Isabella, though spared, lived the rest of her life in relative obscurity. The lessons of this period resonated throughout English history. Edward III's early reign was shaped by the need to rebuild trust between the crown and the nobility. He distanced himself from his father's mistakes, restoring stability and initiating a period of relative prosperity. Conclusion. The execution of Hugh le Despenser the Younger in 1326 was a defining moment in medieval English politics. It symbolized the rejection of royal favoritism, the triumph of baronial power, and the fragility of monarchy. Despenser's downfall and brutal execution served as a cautionary tale, illustrating the dangers of unchecked ambition and the consequences of alienating one's peers. For Edward II, Isabella, and Mortimer, the events of 1326 to 1327 reshaped their lives and legacies. The story of Hugh le Despenser the Younger remains a vivid reminder of the complexities of medieval power struggles, the interplay of personal and political dynamics, and the enduring tensions between monarchy and nobility. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious.